We begin this show on a sour note. Something that is deeply distressing to us all, which is that Filmstruck is being shut down, and that could have gotten that on the barely would have been able to get that on the last show if we hadn't recorded it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So, this is about a week ago. Filmstruck shut down
By Warner, of course.
It's going to happen in November, and it's the AT&T thing, right? AT&T Time Warner merging, and as always happens with these mergers, the new owner or new partner says we got to see what we can cut, and so all those guys that are born and bred in these MBA mindsets, they just start looking for things to cut, and they've looked at all of the Warner digital initiatives, and they just aren't pulling their weight.
It's not a matter of a lack of profitability, as you say. It's a matter of it's not profitable enough.
And in this case, we have to remember and this is I've complained about this for years, as have other people. If you've ever read the book Bean Counters and Car Guys by Bob Lutz, who used to run GM, and I get it, Bob Lutz was not the greatest CEO, but the argument he makes is, at least I'm a car guy. I loved cars, and the guys who built the car companies, like the people who built the movie studios, loved the thing that they were making.
Yeah.
There
was a Ford running that Ford company until 10 years ago.
And when the bean counters come in, it's all interchangeable. You could run Pepsi, you could run Hewlett Packard, or you could run Tyson Meats. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. And they come into the movie business, and they see something like Filmstruck, and they don't realize that there are a lot of people attached to this, and they are attached to it because they love it. Whether they're on the Filmstruck management and curation end or on the consumer end, they love it, and it's not losing money. So why do this to us? Because you have a library. You were saying before the show, all those movies are now just going to sit there and no one's doing anything with them
in an air-conditioned vault. I think it seems to them like they're not in the movie business because they're not making movies. These are movies that already exist. They're old movies. I think they do the very sort of obvious thing of looking at the youthful audience and saying, the youth are not going to want to see these movies, and I think they simply see them as a dead weight.
Yeah,
they're wrong.
They're incredibly wrong, and it's free content, for crying out loud. It's been paid for, and it's paid for itself many times over. So I get it. You want to make new stuff and always be on the cutting edge, but at a certain point, you get to a place where there's so much content on Netflix and Hulu and these other services now that people can't find it all.
Yeah,
it's easy to find things that are curated for you on a site where everything is the cream of the crop.
Yep, you can't go wrong.
So I'm gonna chase this down. I've already sent out emails to all these various entities and the people that I was dealing with, and I'm gonna chase it all down and see if I can get some answers. I know everybody, if you're being paid if your paycheck is still there and you're still being paid by AT&T Time Warner, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
You're gonna zip it up and protect your job. But I think I can get some people to confide in me off the record. So I'm going to see what I can do and get as much information as I can. Obviously, our hope is that that something when the Time Warner, AOL, AT&T, whatever else you want to plug into that corporate name, when they finally launch their streaming service, which apparently now will come after the Disney service and before the Apple service, there will be hopefully a place where you can access all of this. It's all there. It's digitized. It's ready to stream. It's sitting on hard drives. The pipes are there, the access is there, the people to curate it are there. I can't imagine why they wouldn't make that a part of it. But the thing is, now you've cut everybody loose. That audience isn't being transitioned over as it was with the Warner, the Warner Archive audience when they folded that into Filmstruck. Now you're cutting these people loose, and if you want them to come back to the service, you got to go scrape them back together all over again. And I'm sure that's as simple as just going down the Filmstruck subscriber list and sending us all an email. But still, you gotta win me back.
Yeah, well, it's it's a vexing sort of it's just puzzling. You look at this and you're like, "No, what the heck is going on?" But then again, the same thing happened to the studios 10 years ago. They all started to go away. All of those sort of like little mid-range.
It was in
studios.
2005 and 6. We lost Fine Line. We lost Warner Art Independent. We lost Picture House. We lost
Roadshow, and now
all of it. They all went away. Paramount Classics, Miramax. They all went away in about 2.5 years, except for Fox Searchlight Focus and Sony Classics.
Yeah. And they sort of concentrated on comedies, but all those other ones that made those sort of mid-range dramatic films.
Yeah.
But you know what? Those films, in terms of all profitable, all those movies made money.
Yeah.
But they don't make the kind of profits that the Marvel movies make, and they pointed everything at that. Bringing all of that, the DC universe, the Marvel universe, up at Universal, the universe of monsters, which turned out to be a mess. There's a certain kind of filmmaking that simply has migrated to streaming services.
And it's important that we understand something, which frankly Peter Guber tried to make us understand when he was my professor a million years ago at UCLA, because he kind of saw it coming. Emphasizing that you're not in the movie business. You're in the movie and the soundtrack and the game and the tie-in business, and it all wraps together. And that was not something that you want to hear when you're an aspiring film student. You don't want to think about that. But in a sense, Marvel movies. And look, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and we go to Disneyland on a regular basis with our passes, they have a Bug's World was the part of California Adventure where you had all these toddler-oriented rides and attractions based on A Bug's Life. Mm-hmm. Well, A Bug's Life is a generation old now. Anyone who grew up on A Bug's Life is probably not into A Bug's Life right now. They're taking their toddlers there, and those toddlers have no connection to the movie.
Right.
So they killed off that part of the park, and it's being turned into a Marvel area now. Now, they already took the Tower of Terror away from the Twilight Zone theme and turned that into a Guardians of the Galaxy thing. So now that's going to bleed over in all this other Marvel-themed stuff. And I am reminded every time we walk past that under construction area and the new Star Wars land, which opens up next year, that they are not making Star Wars and Marvel movies because they love the movies. They're making them because they drive all these other aspects of the business.
It's a bizarre thing, though, because you and I both know that at Disneyland, Disney World, which is where I used to go, being from the Midwest, you more or less had the same sort of experience, and Mickey and all this kind of stuff. And this lasted for how many generations? I mean, 6, 7, 8 generations.
Sure.
From conception. Passed along from father from parents to children to more children to more children, but now no, right? So all those rides that you and I both rode on as children at Disneyland, Disney World, you will not. I mean, a few of them are hang around pirates of this and that kind of stuff, but about every generation or so, they're going to swap out now, and it won't be a thing of where it's the same experience through generations going back 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It won't be. I'm sure Mickey will be around, but much of it is going to always change because it will be the media that drives the thing, not the thing that drives the media.
I mean, I know our listeners who've been with us a long time have a particular point of view on this, and they wouldn't be with us if they didn't. But go ahead and email us at gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com, either one. Or go on to either the CineGods page or the DigiGods page on Facebook and let us know, is it possible, this is something else we were talking about before the show, is it possible still to get significant numbers of people of all ages and backgrounds and nationalities and creeds and races and ages and socioeconomic status from all different countries and corners of the globe to congregate around a single thing? Is it possible to get all these people to find meaning and satisfaction and entertainment in their lives with the same product, the same song, the same movie, the same TV show, the same book, the same something? Or are we now such a fragmented, digitally compartmentalized society that that everybody goes somewhere else. Everybody finds their own little corner of the globe and just sequesters themselves and says to hell with everybody else, because that's not good.
In the movies, this is going to be difficult. Look, we still have a World Cup. We still have
That's true.
The Olympics every 4 or less than 4 now because they split them. So all right, that stuff is still floating around out there. I suppose in the West, the United States anyway, the World Series is going on right now. I don't give a damn about it, but there are a lot of people who do.
Sure.
Same thing with that Super Bowl.
NBA championship.
Yes, stuff like that. So you'll have these, but with cinema, this kind of entertainment, where it streams and television and this, that, and the other thing. No, I don't think so. You're not going to get 30 million people watching an episode of MASH or Dallas or any of these things. I mean, you and I mean, dude, you know what's weird? I know. And I didn't know you then, but I know that you and I watched the final episode of Magnum P.I. together.
Of course we did.
Were on, but I know we did. I know we did. So I don't know. Can you do that again? I don't think so.
No, it makes me sad. But honestly, email us. Hit us with an email or post something on one of the pages, and we want to hear from you. Have this discussion with the listeners, because it's important. We want to know what you think. It's important. All right, so let's move along here and try to pull ourselves out of our doldrums a little bit. I got a few kid viddy things I want to knock out here real quickly. We've got Pinkalicious and Peterific, from the ridiculous to the sublime, or vice versa. Best Pink Present. This is a PBS Kids show. This is perfectly good for boys and girls. Most of them kind of skew one way or the other now. My daughter, not really into this. She's still very much into Sarah and Duck and Peppa Pig, which we're going to mention in a second. Sarah and Duck has new seasons, by the way. We're not getting that on... Sarah and Duck has never been on DVD. We get that off of Amazon streaming, and that's the way of the future, I guess. Anyway, 4 stories in here, including the very adorable Glitterizer. And then also on the PBS Kids front is from Super Y, Little Bo Peep and Her Sheep, or rather, The Adventures of Little Bo Peep and Her Sheep. Look, Super Y is just junior superhero stuff to teach you learning and reading, and that's it. It's all very oriented towards reading, which I am going through on a whole different level now, and it's fascinating watching kids learn to read. We've also got on the kind of PBS front, but it's a world unto itself, Sesame Street Elmo's World, Elmo Explores. This is just more stuff from Elmo's World on all kinds of stuff, colors and cooking and painting and all kinds of just fun stuff. Perfectly great for adults to watch as well, including they've got 3 episodes of Elmo's World on here, and then 2 episodes of the Furchester Hotel. Very, very funny, very clever, very referential. I always enjoy that stuff. From the DC end of things is DC Superhero Girls Legends of Atlantis. This is an original movie which skews younger, but I enjoy the superhero girls because it's all about girl power, and girls need superheroes and superheroines as well in this case. And it's all Aqua Girl world related, or rather Aquaman. They're helping Aquaman in this case, and Siren and Mira are the Atlanteans that sort of team up with Wonder Woman and Batgirl and Supergirl, and it's all good. Yeah. It's all good. And then Peppa Pig stars.
Can't go wrong.
Cannot go wrong with Peppa Pig. This includes stars, of course, is the anchor episode on here where they go to the moon, and you get Grampy Rabbit's lighthouse and Daddy Pig's birthday, and Delphine Donkey is introduced in one of the episodes here. Trip to the moon. So this is just more episodes of Peppa. 12 episodes in total. If you love Peppa Pig like we do in our house, you get it. It's the reason that my daughter says water instead of water. And she can say water, but she prefers to say water. And it's funny.
She's got style.
You're going to love this. We got a, they do those little reports where they evaluate your kids early on. And we got one that said, that came back and with respect to her speech said, sometimes sounds as if she speaks with a British, perhaps a New England accent. I thought that we laughed. We thought that was so funny. We're like, yeah.
They're being very attentive, though. You gotta love those teachers.
No, you do. Yeah. And we explained. We're like, yes, that's intentional. We did that on purpose. Yeah, because we're snobs. And then a couple from Nick Jr. here. You know what? This one I'm going to save for the holiday show. I'm going to set that aside. So the only one I'm going to talk about here is Nick Jr. Top Wing. So the Angry Birds phenomenon went away very, very quickly because it's a game. It's not a TV show. It's not movies. You can't really expand that. But oh, look what's on Comet behind you. It's Mad Max.
Oh, fantastic.
That's great. Tim's got the TV on in the background. It just happens to be Mad Max, and now I'm not going to pay attention to the show.
Can't go wrong.
Anyway, but Nick Jr. was smart, and they said, there's something to this Angry Birds thing. Maybe if we actually took a general bird-oriented idea and got rid of all the game trappings and did our own thing. And we're going to come up with Team Top Wing about all these cool little birds, and they wear helmets and they're learning. It's like Top Gun for birds, it's all about learning. So you use that like Super Why does for reading. You use this to kind of teach kids about all kinds of other things and safety and whatnot. So it's really, really quite good. It's very, very clever, very, very clever. I give them all the credit in the world. And, here, let me knock out a couple of docs as well, because most of what we're doing today is old movies, new movies, and foreign.
Ah, yes.
So we're going to, I'll just, I'll hit off some of these PBS things. 3 PBS titles. Our Man in Tehran. This is actually really, really quite timely. So one of the things I just recently did Film Week and talked about On Her Shoulders, which is a doc about Nadia, the Nobel Peace winner.
The Yazidi
who's one of the
woman,
her Yazidi, formerly a sex slave and now a Nobel winner and an activist for her people. And as part of this wave of documentary attention to a lot of the hotspots in the Middle East and throughout the world that have sort of been, not cast aside, but they've been neglected. Syria being one of them, and Iran certainly being another one. So we're getting these stories now, stories that we didn't even know about this before. And this is about Thomas Airbrink, who was who covered all Iranian everything inside Iran as a bureau chief for the New York Times, and he is still there, and he is one of the only journalists from any Western outlet, publication, network, or anything who is able to be there and cover the things that go on there, so that we have at least one source to give us accurate news from things that happen inside Iran. And it's so utterly crucial. It's not like Iran is an unimportant country. So this is a frontline documentary that just does as good of a job as you can in going behind what he does without jeopardizing what he does, if that makes sense. So anyway, it is. It's pretty darn interesting, and if you consider the geopolitical challenges in doing this, Frontline once again outdoes themselves. We have Art in the 21st Century Season 9, also from PBS, which is a globe-trotting series that looks at creativity as it exists in the world today. This thing has won Peabody Awards and continues to be really, really interesting. In this particular season, we go to Berlin, Johannesburg, and San Francisco and find all kinds of really fascinating artists and interesting ways in which they express themselves culturally and individually. It's really, really good. Another very timely Frontline. I don't know how they pump these things out so quickly, just right on the backs of the news, but Separated Children at the Border. The whole border thing that happened not too many months ago and may wind up happening again, depending. But anyway, this personalizes a lot of the stuff of the families that were there, and it gets into the policy behind it, gets into the people, the Border Patrol agents, the all of the different colliding and conflicting cross purposes that are part of immigration and border policy in the United States. Very, very interesting, and it asks difficult questions of everyone on all sides. A lovely documentary from Zeitgeist via Kino Lorber is Love, Cecil. The life of legendary photographer Cecil Beaton. This is from Lisa.
Love that doc.
It's so good, isn't it? I mean,
well, he was a character.
Oh, it wouldn't be an interesting doc if he wasn't.
Yeah.
And
was not liked by a lot of people.
Yeah, and for good reason, frankly.
He was an ass.
Yeah, for good reason, but
a brilliant,
absolutely brilliant
designer and
so
everything else. Yeah.
Lisa Imordino Vreeland, who previously did the documentary on Diana Vreeland, is the genius behind this documentary, which is an absolutely wonderful look narrated by Rupert Everett at why he was so influential and so dynamic and why he was so damn disliked. Get some great deleted scenes here as well. But I mean, people interviewed here who give all kinds of fascinating background and inside information. It's really, really great. So, but the interesting thing about Cecil Beaton is primarily for movie fans.
Yeah.
He's basically known as a costume designer, and you probably know him mainly for his costumes of Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. But principally, he was, he was a legendary photographer, and he just had a foot in all these different artistic endeavors, and had so many different facets to his life, and was so kind of so typical of a certain very effete Hollywood, hoity-toity, artsy kind of intellectual of his era. But nonetheless, really an extraordinary figure. And so much to cover here, which they do, and it's beautiful. It's quite beautiful. Really, really good doc. And then lastly is Master. There are a million movies out there called Master, so this is the one. It's a documentary from Cinema Libre, and the subject is Master Zhu Ting Ju. That's ZhouTingJue. Master Zhu Ting Ju is a healer who specializes in the art of Qigong, which is related to Kung Fu and Tai Chi. And this is not just a look at him and what he does, but it actually follows him, sort of gives you a background on his life, and then you follow him from San Francisco back to China. And it's where he sort of reconnects with his past, and it's quite moving and very interesting, and has a lot of little sidebars and subplots that you would not necessarily expect. It's really one of the more interesting Cinema Libre films I've seen in a very, very long time. So bravo to them, and it has 3 interesting deleted scenes that I don't think they should have deleted. So there's that.
Wow.
All right, Tim, music?
Well, yeah, since we got a couple of these docs here, we might as well take a look at them. The first is Melanie live at the Meltdown Festival 2007 in the UK. It had not been since 1987.
Yep.
Was the last time that Melanie performed in the UK. She's of course the folk singer, going back to the late 60s. They called her the sort of female Bob Dylan of the day. She was outlandish and radical and wonderful, known for that beautiful guitar playing and some wonderful, wonderful songs. And this is a really wonderful 2007, recorded in 2007 of her at Glastonbury. Poetic songwriting. You have to just, if you love the music of Melanie, though, then you're going to want to add this to your collection of her performances. Not a whole lot else on this DVD, but then again, Melanie's performing, so you don't need a whole lot more else. The 40th anniversary special edition of Yes songs.
I didn't like Yes growing up. Learned to love them later on.
Yeah, well, that sort of big symphonic rock,
prog rock stuff.
Yeah, kind of thing that they were doing back then. A lot of electronic instruments, and they made use of every key on every one of them. This was filmed in 1972 in London at the Rainbow Theatre, and was released theatrically back then. Hasn't been around for a very long time. This features all kinds of additional special features, including 4 new Yes Songs artwork cards, sort of specially created for this box by Roger Dean, and just all kinds of stuff to enjoy. Original restored mono track, restored high definition digital transfer from the original 16mm film. The film was shot with the artwork back then was the sort of melting letters and all that kind of stuff was really kind of cool. Yes, 40th anniversary special edition.
Cool.
There. Shall we pop over to some of the new business? Or
let's break up the foreign, because it's a lot of foreign. Yeah. So let me just knock out a few foreign things for people. just to give them a little, give us a little breathing room.
Pace
So
there.
we've got some. These are only on DVD, and these might go under your radar if you're not looking for them, if you're not paying attention. But they're all definitely worth a look. This one was at Toronto, The Poet and the Boy. Wonderful kind of. I don't want to say it's necessarily Ozu-like because it's not that austere and it's much more accessible, but it kind of thematically dovetails with a little bit of Ozu things. This is a Korean film, The Poet and the Boy, and it is a funny, touching kind of coming of life story about a guy who is he's still trying to make it as a poet. He's pushing 40 years old, and he's never his wife is long suffering, and he's still in this kind of dead end town, the Mayberry of Korea, and just his desire, his obsessive desire to be a poet is what is the only thing that really drives him, gives him any hope. And one day he meets this teenage kid at a donut shop, and that relationship winds up changing everything for both of them. And I won't tell you where that actually goes, but the filmmaker who debuts here is Kim Yang-hee, and does a wonderful, wonderful job, and will do many, many great things in the future. The movie is The Poet and the Boy. It's really worth checking out. Gabriel and the Mountain is a movie that might get a little bit of awards attention here at end of the year, possibly. This is from Strand. And this is the story of a guy who decides to travel the world for a year before going to university, and that journey is, as we often say in the film critic biz, is a journey of self-discovery, and it winds up with climbing a mountain in Africa, and it's quite good. Based on a true story, presumably, so we'll see. Anyway, directed by Felipe Barbosa. That's from Strand Releasing, Gabriel and the Mountain. Let's see, moving through here real quickly. This was a Cannes entry in the Uncertain Regard section, The Desert Bride. This is also an absolutely lovely film you should definitely check out. Basically a late life, older age fairy tale between an older man and an older woman in Buenos Aires, and it's just so sweet and so touching and so earnest, and it's just wonderfully acted.
Thoroughly enjoyed that film.
It's really good, isn't it? It's just all about the acting, and they're just so sweet. A little bit different is Mambo Cool. This was did quite an extensive festival run around the world, and this is a little bit gritty. This is in Colombia, and deals with drug dealing and kind of the grittier parts of being on the street, and how people survive on the street. And we normally see that in American films, but it's interesting to see the Colombia aspect of it as well. And then the last two here, La Familia by Gustavo Rondon Cordova. This was also kind of a festival favorite a little bit. This takes place in Caracas, and it has this is a little even grittier. This is about a father and a son struggling against poverty and crime and everything else that goes on in Caracas, which is, given what's going on in Venezuela right now. It's fascinating that they were able to even tell this story, because it is partly a Venezuelan film. It's a co-production between Venezuela, Chile, and Norway. Where they shot it, how they were able to shoot it, I'm not entirely sure, but this is from Film Movement, and it's really quite good, La Familia. And then the last one here, before we jump into some new movies, is The Misandrists. This is from renowned gay filmmaker Bruce LaBruce. Bruce LaBruce, very quite well known in gay cinema. This is also from Strand Releasing, who of course made their name originally distributing a lot of LGBT-themed stuff. And this has kind of a punk sensibility to it. Feels very retro, as a lot of Bruce LaBruce stuff does. It's I'm not sure that this is going to have a really huge following necessarily outside of core Bruce LaBruce devotees, but it's stylistic and certainly has that aggressively what's the word underground.
Yeah.
Not entirely underground, but there's a transgressive. That's the word. This is a real kind of a transgressive ensemble piece. So it's called The Misandrists. It's exactly what the title tells you. If you don't know what misandrist is, go look it up. That's exactly what the movie is.
Misanthropes are wonderful. Shall we pop over to a few new movies?
Yeah, new movies.
Sorry to Bother You was a really, really funny film. It came out earlier in the year before Black Klansman, and it was the black film.
Yeah,
for a while.
But it has some.
But it's not.
It has some vague similarities to Black Klansman that created an uncomfortable kind of me or you moment there. And
which
I didn't
always
like
bugs
that.
me when these filmmakers sort of slip into these things, which is completely unnecessary. But there it is. Anyway, Boots Riley, known as a sort of hip hop producer, really, this was his sort of first feature film.
Directing debut.
Directing debut, which is kind of crazy because Boots has made videos that are as long as some people's movies. So whatever with that.
It's kind of true.
Yeah. Lakeith Stanfield, very, very good in this film. It takes place in Oakland, California, sort of like a kind of Oakland, California. It's not really Oakland because it's sort of a mystical, magical thing going on. And he's a telemarketer, and he finds that when he uses what we black folks like to call our white voice.
That's so funny.
It's a thing that you learn to do growing up, and that he becomes a much better telemarketing person. And so it's all kinds of cultural commentary going on inside this very funny, sort of originally conceived movie here. And everybody should check it out. I hate that it came out so early that people might have forgotten about it a little bit now. I hate that whole silly thing happened between Boots and Spike and Black Klansman. These things are not mutually exclusive.
I wish Boots had taken a breath before he wrote that letter.
Yeah.
Just take a breath.
Yeah.
But he felt like Spike stole his thunder and knocked his movie out of theaters and ripped him off or some such thing. And look, a guy who uses his white voice versus a detective who uses a white detective to, I get it. There's like kind of some sort of shared.
These are
totally different things.
And by the way, the black folks can go see both of these movies.
White people can go see both of them. Everybody can see both of
the movies. It's okay, guys. Just relax.
It's not like anyone is sitting there going, "Oh man, why did they pass that law that forces me to only see one of these two movies?"
I can only see one of the two black folk movies. That's so silly and a bit of a shame. Blu-ray special features. A commentary track with Boots and what looks like a little documentary film about the making of this movie. It's rated R, by the way, and it's really, really funny. That's the thing about this movie. And Black Klansman. Mostly, they're funny, and that's the reason why people should check them out. But this one is Sorry to Bother You. Destination Wedding with Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves. There was a time if Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves we're in any movie, let alone in a movie together, that would have been a hit movie. This movie came and went like in 30 seconds.
And deservedly so. So here's the thing about Destination Wedding. When Tim says this is a movie with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, he does not mean starring Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder plus a cast of others. He means this is a movie with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder and nobody else.
Yeah, pretty much no.
There's no one else in. I mean, there are some extras, but basically, this is two people who meet unpleasant at the airport on their way to a wedding
that they don't want to go to.
They don't want to go to, and then they realize they hate each other, and then they realize they're going to the same wedding, and that they have a connection to the people at the wedding, and that they know a lot of the same people, and that, oh, you're that person, and you're that person. Oh, I've heard about you. And for the remainder of the movie, it's just the two of them talking.
Yeah.
And they're talking at the wedding, and they're talking after the wedding, and yes, they hook up, and then they argue, and then they love, and then they argue, and then they make up, and and he is so pretentious and so kind of annoyingly Godardianly.
And that's the thing. It's not so much that setup that bugs me. It's just that what it gets filled with. And you know what's funny to me? It's the guy who wrote and directed this, Victor Levine.
Yeah.
Big television guy. Goes way back, particularly to Mad About You.
Right.
Big producer, directed a lot of episodes of Mad About You, which was nothing more than this, Mad About You, sitting in that apartment, sitting at that deli. So I know he knows how to do. There are other people in Mad About You, her sister and all of that. But, it's the same thing.
I give it props for being kind of ambitious and wanting to be gimmicky in an ambitious way. But I'm getting, if you see as many movies as we do, you get tired of the gimmicks.
Yeah.
You really do. It's like, oh, look. It's just, if you can make the gimmick work.
And here's the thing:
Sure.
if that gimmick works, you don't need Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves.
No, you don't.
If that
true.
script works, if that story works,
Yeah.
then you don't need them. You could get two good theater actors and knock that out, and people would not be distracted by the Winona and Keanu.
Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a trio of African films here from IndiePix. This is a really, really interesting. This is part of their Retro Africa collection from IndiePix, and these are movies that would otherwise never make it to here if they didn't release them as part of a collection. So just know that there are some really, really interesting stuff in native languages and in Zulu and other things that come out of South Africa, and all of them worth paying attention to. It is, it's otherwise known as Sollywood.
Yeah.
Nollywood is the Nigerian version of Bollywood crossed with Hollywood. The version in South Africa is Sollywood, and that's where these movies come from. They are all really interesting. I would love for some of these filmmakers to make their way out.
A few years ago, South Africa was spitting some filmmakers out at us.
They were?
Yeah, I mean, you had the guy who made that big District 13,
District 9.
District 9. Thank you.
District
And then
9,
a few years before that, he was doing.
It's an industry in flux and in evolution, and it'll get there. But all these native languages, these films, and there was one just this last year that I really didn't like about like a tribal circumcision ritual.
Yeah.
My gosh, that was unpleasant.
Yeah.
But anyway, these are all really good. So one's called Fishy Stones, which is kind of a movie about a petty crook. Gone Crazy, which is a little bit more elaborate and not quite as well done. It's dealing with kind of like a bombing scenario. And then the best one of the three is Umbango, which is a neo-Western, like a South African Western that takes place in kind of a frontier environment. And it's, I guess the only way to call it is like it's not, I wouldn't call it like a spaghetti Western. Whatever the equivalent of spaghetti is in South Africa, that's kind of what this is. It's really quite interesting and very clever, and deals with a couple of guys who are who've been wrongly accused of a murder and have to fight back on the equivalent of the revengeful land baron guy. It's taking a lot of Western tropes and converting them into South African equivalents, and it's really very interesting and very clever and very well done. And the fact that this was done in 1985 under apartheid makes it even more interesting. Umbango. So that's Umbango, Fishy Stones, and Gone Crazy, all from IndiePix, all part of the Retro Africa collection, and that's Africa with a K, as in Afrika.
Africa. Satsi, I remember that. About
Yeah, Satsi too.
Big Academy Award nomination.
Yep.
Olga Kurylenko stars in Mara, which is from the people who do the Paranormal Activity movies and the Insidious movies and all that kind of stuff. This is actually a pretty good little thriller. A woman is killed in her sleep. There's only one witness. The woman's 8-year-old daughter. Olga is the detective who goes to interview the daughter and try to figure out what's going on. And what we do is we work ourselves into a sort of like a little horror thriller about this ancient spirit that comes and kills people in their sleep. That she has to sort of figure out. It's really just a nice little horror movie. The kind of thing you throw in around and about Halloween time, and get yourself a little scare. A lot of fun. There is one special feature, a featurette about the making of the film.
Nice.
On the box there. God Knows Where I Am. This is a disturbing little movie about this woman who's found dead in a farmhouse. She basically starves and freezes to death. And she's found with her diary next to her, and she's been writing in this diary over the course of about 4 or 5 months while she's more or less losing her mind. But the film is really about how folks fall through the cracks of society. This was a successful woman, a school teacher. She had a family. But a few bad circumstances twist and turn this way and that, and before she knew it, she was homeless, and before she knew it, she was completely abandoned by pretty much all of society, and there was nothing there to help her, and she found herself in this sort of abandoned farmhouse with nothing but apples and rainwater and winter approaching, and it's really, really, really very, very, very sad, and while not a true story, does point to the kind of things that happen in society occasionally. Quite a moving film, actually. Quite a moving film. God Knows Where I Am.
We've got three interesting films here from Facets. One from the great Yugoslavian. That country doesn't even exist anymore. Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
It's now like 4 or 5 other countries. But the great Yugoslavian filmmaker Dusan Makavejev, or Makavejev, however you want to pronounce it. And it is called Gorilla Bathes at Noon. This is why we get Facets, because they're able to dig up stuff that it slips through the cracks with everyone else, including Criterion. And this is basically a screwball comedy, kind of Eastern European style. This is all in English, German, and Russian. He's a Yugoslavian filmmaker, but this is in English, German, and Russian. And it's the wildest, weirdest. Let's just say it's not American style screwball comedy. This is World War II Russian screwball comedy, and it deals with issues surrounding prospective reunification of East and West Germany. Now, this was made in 1993, right after the wall had fallen. So you're literally in the middle of it, and you're completely immersed in the moment. So it's very much about it's not looking backward; it's looking at the world around them at the time, and it is. It's quite a thing. So Gorilla Bathes at Noon. It is every bit as weird and strange and wonderful and compelling as its title. The other two here, equally interesting. Rodrigo D. No Future by Victor Gavira, which is a Colombian film made in 1990 that uses mostly non-actors and tells a very kind of gritty, street, neorealist story of delinquency and this kid who wants to be a punk rocker, but they're just too immersed in crime and drugs and just getting by every day to be able to make it real. And it's about dreams, and it's about living in a war zone as your daily life, and it's quite a powerful film done in that really gritty neorealistic kind of Dardenne Brothers style.
Yeah.
It's really quite good. And then the last one here from Facets is the magnificent The Skeleton of Mrs. Morales by Rogelio A. Gonzalez. This is a Mexican film from 1960, a period when there was a lot of experimentation going on, and this is a very, very, very dark comedy adapted from a short story by Luis Alcoriza, who the story was written by Arthur Machen. It's called The Islington Mystery. It's not a Mexican story, but it was Luis Alcoriza, who worked often with Luis Buñuel, who adapted it, and for Rogelio Gonzalez. And it's kind of it's an interesting allegory that centers around a guy who does taxidermy and has a particularly unpleasant wife. And apparently it's meant to be a bit of a satire. I don't really understand the genre that it's satirizing, so I look at it as just a very, very dark comedy of 1960s Mexican manners, and it is very, very good. It is called The Skeleton of Mrs. Morales from Facets.
The Scorpion King, Book of Souls. The
My
Scorpion
gosh,
King
is
movie.
this still going?
It's nuts. First one, which of course was itself a spinoff from the Mummy movies.
Yeah.
The Scorpion King.
Not making any more mummy movies.
Oh no, they
but we're
quit.
still doing
They
Scorpion
kept
King.
doing these. First one was The Rock, back when they still called him The
Yeah.
Rock, back in 2002. Anyway, here we are, 16 years later. The Rock ain't in it no more, and you're not going to know who any of these people are. But it doesn't make any difference because they keep making these movies, and you know what? They're pretty big, and they're kind of expensive, and they're all they're no worse than the original Scorpion King, which was not particularly good. As a matter of fact, of those Mummy movies, only the first one was any good. So
True.
that gets you to that real quick. Doesn't come with a whole lot in terms of special features, but if you're into the Scorpion King movies, well, this is one of them. Making a Killing. This is a loose little sort of crunchy, hard-boiled sort of Coen Brothers-esque sort of thriller about this guy who has this very expensive coin collection. He gets sent to prison for something that he does, and he has these two brothers who are supposed to take care of his coin collection for him while he's away. Gets out of prison, comes back, wants his coins back. Of course, the brothers, they don't want to give him the coins back. Meanwhile, a detective comes to town to investigate a murder. First murder in this town in over 30 years, played by Michael Jai White. What's interesting about this, it's all based on a true story. This is a movie, but it's all loosely based on an actual true story. And it plays pretty gritty and pretty sharp. These guys, it's like I said, very Coen Brothers-esque, very blood simple. Young Coen Brothers is what's going on here. Michael Jai White, Sally Kirkland, and the great Christopher Lloyd star.
Interesting movie here called, this is from Film Movement, a German film called Egon Schiele, Death and the Maiden. Not to be confused with the Roman Polanski Death and the Maiden, which was also quite good, actually. This deals specifically with the painter, Egon Schiele, of the famous Death and the Maiden painting, and the women who presumably inspired him, were his muse, were the source of what eventually drove him creatively to deliver that painting. And it's a look inside of that particular triangle during the World War I period. German with the subtitles. This is and actually it's an Austrian film. I should correct myself there. It's an Austrian finance film, but in German. And I guess you could probably say it's kind of kind of in the Unbearable Lightness of Being / Henry and June vein a little bit. It has that feel to it, and being a Film Movement movie, it comes with a great short film called Nothing Happens, which is from Denmark and France, which has no dialogue, by the way. It's a really, really cool film. Nothing Happens. It's hysterically cool and unusual and weird. But anyway, otherwise, highly recommended Egon Schiele, Death and the Maiden, by Dieter Berner, starring Noah Saavedra, Marissa Rainier, and Valerie Pachner. I'm just half German and I can't pronounce these names. It's pathetic.
Oh, that's funny. This is a neat little movie. I saw this movie, Breaking Brooklyn, with Vondie Curtis Hall and Louis Gossett Jr. and these two young men. It's a dance movie.
Nice.
You got these two brothers. One's 12, the other one's a little bit older. The 12-year-old is really just a wonderful little dancer, and that's all he really wants to do. And you got the other kid, his big brother, and they have this goofy father who gets himself arrested, and then their car gets stolen. They were living in the car in the first place, and now they're on the streets. These two young boys, and they're taken in by one of their teachers, Lou Gossett Jr., who just brings them into the home. And what we get is this really sweet and touching family film, just about these men who look out and see these young people in distress and just decide to throw everything they got at them and to see if they can help them get through this time in their lives. And it's just the sweetest, most lovely little movie you ever did want to see. And it's full of, me, I love my dance movies.
Yeah.
And this is full of some fantastic dancing and hip hop music and graffiti, and I don't know, it's kind of corny, I guess, but I like it anyway. I wish there were some special features on it, but there are not.
A movie called The 12th Man by Harald Svart. Now, Harald Svart is a Norwegian filmmaker born in the Netherlands who had a bit of a Hollywood career until he made the new Karate Kid, and that kind of ended things. He also did, Pink Panther 2, which was horrible. Agent Cody Banks. These are all terrible movies. But he started well with a movie called One Night at McCool's, which I really liked. You remember that?
That guy, and One Night at McCool's.
One Night at McCool's has that great moment where
Paul Reiser
is in the bondage stuff, and there's a crate that gets dropped on him. It's hysterical.
As it happens, that guy's he was from St. Louis.
Yeah,
and he died rather strange. No, the guy who wrote it.
The guy who wrote it.
That's who died.
The guy who wrote it. Yeah. Well, anyway, Harald Svart has gone back to Europe, as they often do, and he's made a really, really cool little movie there called The 12th Man, which is based on a true World War II story about a kind of it's a survival film, basically, about a sabotage mission, an anti-Nazi sabotage mission, and the guys behind it who have to run through the Arctic, running from the Gestapo. It's a really, really, really good movie, and it makes me sad that Svart had to leave Hollywood because they kept handing him bad movies to direct.
Yeah.
He goes back to Europe and gets to pick his own projects and makes a good one.
Yeah.
Lesson to be learned: let him tell you what movie he wants to make. If he wanted to make this here, let him.
Yeah.
Don't hand him Pink Panther 2 and friggin' Karate Kid and other nonsense. Just make The 12th Man here in English. It would have been a good movie. You know, still a good movie, but it would have done better business.
One Night at McCool's, really neat little movie.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Hurley. An Elephant's Journey. This is again. I'm just into these lovely little sweet sort of family-oriented films. Which I was going to say I don't know why, but I do know why because I'm corny. This is just a wonderful little movie about a young man who's trying to stop these elephant poachers. And he gets involved with Elizabeth Hurley's character, and they go off, and and they're brave, and he loses his parents early on in the film, and it's just one of those movies that I grew up watching years and years ago, and it's very sweet, and the elephant is like a baby elephant mostly, and then it sort of grows up a bit. Anyway, neat little movie, and you will thoroughly love it. Watch it with your kids. Commentary with the writer-director Richard Boddington is among the special features, along with an interview with Elizabeth Hurley, and an interview with with elephant expert Dr. Richard Leakey of the Leakeys.
Yay!
The Leakeys, they're still around. They need to bring him over to the Los Angeles Zoo. We got an elephant over at the Los Angeles Zoo.
Aren't they doing a Leaky biopic with Brad Pitt or something like that?
Yep, which will be fantastic.
Yeah,
I think,
I'm looking forward to that.
Clan. We have an elephant over at the Los Angeles Zoo that's having some distress. They should bring him over there. Let him take a look at the one they've been talking about.
I still remember in elementary school there was this guy Patrick. Was it Patrick Davis? I think his name was Patrick Davis. Pat, if you're out there, you're still one of the funniest people I've ever known. So this must have been in 4th grade. And the teacher's talking about, the famous archaeologist, Dr. Leakey. And Patrick, 4th grader, smart-ass 4th grader, chimes in, "Did he die of dehydration?" How clever is that?
Actually pretty sharp for the
That's
4th
pretty
grade.
sharp. That's pretty sharp. So I still remember that.
Did he get sent to the principal's office?
No, actually.
Okay.
Class
Good
laughed.
teacher.
Class fueled that just with nobody's business. Fueled that with laughter. So we got we got some great Coen stuff in here. Tim's going to mention one in a second, one of the new ones, but there are a couple of classics. The Official Story, all new restoration. This was an Academy Award winner for Best Foreign Language Film, and quite deservedly so. I've been waiting for this. They were originally thinking of maybe doing a commentary on this, so I was alerted to this very early on. But instead, you wind up with an absolutely wonderful extended interview with Luis Puenzo on the making of the film, which is just absolutely beautiful and terrific. So very, very exciting there. And the film itself is just still one of the great foreign language films of the past 30 years. This was the Oscar winner for 1985, and it is just it's such a beautiful. I mean, this was kind of the beginning of the Argentine New Wave, I guess.
Yeah.
This is when Argentinian cinema really kind of started to explode. But it's just a beautiful look at all of those ugly crevices of Argentine history that the Argentinian films have been wrestling with for the last 30 years, and
Dictatorships and
the dictatorships and what it means to be Argentinian. Yeah, I mean, it's really good stuff. So anyway, The Official Story, a new restoration from Coen, is absolute perfection, including that great 4-part interview with Luis Puenzo. And then the other one is the 70th anniversary 2K restoration of Jean Cocteau's Les Parents Terribles. This is not your average Cocteau film. This is based on a play that Cocteau wrote. And Cocteau, of course, was a very famous playwright as well as being a great filmmaker. This is not like Beauty and the Beast and the other Cocteau films. It is not, surrealistic, and it doesn't have all of those high cinematic flourishes. It's very much a filmed play. And it's a chamber piece, and it takes place essentially in 2 apartments. But it is a very, very compelling collection of performances. And if you can kind of shift gears in your head and say, okay, we're going in, this is that Cocteau, not the other Cocteau, then you will have a really, really good time with it. It's it's about overprotective parents and about fate and about the meaning of family and fidelity, and it's just really, really a wonderful kind of a chamber dramedy with comedic edges is maybe the best way to describe it. But it is Les Parents Terribles, known here as The Storm Within. But it's a wonderful Jean Cocteau film, 70th anniversary 2K restoration from the Classics of French Cinema line of the Cohen Film Collection on Blu-ray.
Also from Cohen, Rodin. This is just a wonderful movie. And it's funny because if you're going to watch this movie, you really have to watch Camille Claudel.
Yeah,
you have to watch
with Depardieu as Rodin,
because it's funny. From Rodin's point of view, she was crazy, but
Yeah.
from her point of view, he was crazy.
That's right.
And so which way do you want to go with that?
Yeah.
This is just visually striking. Vincent Lindon. Doing just a beautiful beard, and he looks like Rodin. And
he's become such a good actor.
and he's just that face.
So good.
Mostly in this movie, he's just sort of lurking and hunching there, and he is terrible. Rodin is terrible in this movie, but you understand that he's terrible for this art, for this work, for these things. His Balzac is just fantastic, and in the movie they go through the process of how he puts together with the wax figures and all that kind of stuff, and he melts it away. The movie is very much about how everyone hated his sculptures.
Interesting.
All of society could not stand him. Who stood behind him and told him, do not yield to these people? It was Camille Claudel, the 19-year-old girl who he was having an affair with. He was a much older man. And it's just absolutely fascinating to me that it was her standing. She came in to work as his assistant. And it was her standing behind him, whispering in his ear all the time, your work is brilliant. Don't yield to them. Don't yield to them. We think of him as being the all-powerful one, but it wasn't him. It was her. She was his backbone. And, ironically, it ended up breaking her.
Yeah.
She was his backbone, but it broke her. Anyway, it's a wonderfully done movie.
So a good double feature then.
Good double feature. You got to watch them both. You got to watch them both. From Cohen Media. All sorts of. Are you on this? Did you do the?
No, I did not.
Anyway,
I haven't done a commentary in a while.
Yeah, right. Good stuff.
Elena Ferrante on film, Ferrante. So here's the deal. This probably means nothing to most people. So Elena Ferrante is the name of the author who wrote a number of very popular novels. Once upon a time, popular Italian novels. And two of them were turned into very, very successful international productions. And they wound up going to festivals. The Days of Abandonment by director Roberto Faenza was in the Venice Film Festival, and Troubling Love by Mario Martone was a selection at Cannes. Now, neither of these films independently would probably have been just cause to release here, but because they're able to tie them together as being based on novels, very successful novels by the same novelist, the film movement was able to justify a really, really interesting double-disc Blu-ray. And the stories are actually quite interesting. Days of Abandonment is about a woman whose husband is going to divorce her, and her life just goes into a complete tailspin. And Troubling Love is a little bit more of a kind of a mystery thriller about a woman who in Naples who has passed away under unusual circumstances, and her daughter comes there for the funeral to try to piece everything together and answer her questions. Examples of a certain kind of Italian filmmaking that you could argue does not exist widely enough these days, but still two very, very fine films for the most part, and together on one collection, Elena Ferrante on film.
I'm looking at this film, The Last Warrior, and I'm getting it now. This is the Scythians.
Yes.
This was called the Scythians when I saw it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And so all right. So that's what this is. A pretty good movie. This is a hack and slash.
They changed the title.
They changed the title. Well, how many people know what a Scythian is? A Scythian is a warrior, by the way.
From ancient Russia.
Yeah. And this movie is about the last few of them left on the steppe, out there, and they have to fight their way. They have to fight their way home. And it's a real hack and slash, broadswords and shields and guys on horses and that kind of stuff. I mean, these go way
I love
back.
that.
This was a pretty good movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. But you got to be into hack and slash if you're going to dig something like this. But
I'm into hack and slash.
I wish that there was some special features on this. They should have, but they didn't do it. Anyway, The Last Warrior is what it's called in English.
So Joaquim Pedro de Andrade, a really significant Brazilian filmmaker from the 60s and 70s who was part of what was called the Cinema Novo movement, now finally gets the curtain lifted on a lot of his very best films. Not terribly well known here. But a really pioneering figure, especially as far as Brazilian and South American filmmaking is concerned. And Kino Classics has released his complete films in a 3-disc set just titled Joaquim Pedro de Andrade. 3 discs, and everything is here. I mean, his shorts and his features, and it's about 8 or 9 films total features, and then just a ton of shorts. I guess 6 features and then a ton of shorts. The stuff that I was able to watch here and really, really was impressed by, and I don't know his work that well, The Priest and the Girl from 1965, really a beautiful, beautiful movie. And then The Conspirators from 1972, also an incredibly beautiful movie, and one of his shortest at 79 minutes. Some very good shorts here, too. Tropical Lane from 1977, Brasilia Contradictions of a New City from 1967, and Cinema Novo from 1967, which is a half-hour, kind of the foundational film of the Cinema Novo movement. So really good stuff. All of them mastered in 2K, released in Blu-ray here in a great set. Joaquim Pedro de Andrade. Really, really great movie for fans of Brazilian cinema.
For fans of Israeli cinema, sort of German-Israeli cinema, in any case, The Cakemaker here. This is a wonderful 2017 movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I believe it was the Israeli submission for the Academy Awards that year or the year before. Basically, it's about this German baker who's having an affair with a man who dies in a car crash. The man's family is back in Israel. He travels to Israel to take care of, whatever business needs to be taken care of, and he finds that the man had a wife and a child. So he was having an affair with this guy who has a wife and a child back in Israel. He sort of insinuates himself into the family and goes to work at the little coffee shop bakery that the wife is running. He himself is a baker. He's not kosher, but everybody loves the cakes. And it's a little bit about how the religious community doesn't really care for this not kosher German guy selling cake in the neighborhood. But it's also about that relationship and how he comes to know his lover's wife and his lover's child and becomes a part of their family too. It really is a sweet and moving little movie about acceptance. Is what it's about. It's one of those movies where the food plays, eat, drink, love, all that kind of stuff, where the food plays a very, very pivotal role in the dynamic in which in the way in which you experience the film too. So really neat. Certified fresh on the Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm going to certify it too.
Cool. The last couple foreign language films here, both French. The Guardians. This is from Film Movement. I'm sorry, not Film Movement. This is Music Box. Music Box releasing. The Guardians is a terrific movie with the wonderful Natalie Baye, who continues to be absolutely amazing. Takes place in 1915. And while the men are off fighting at war, the women are holding down the farm. And this is essentially a really powerful, moving melodrama that takes place on the farm, the home front. It's one of those movies that while the war is going, this is the war at home, right? We see that very, very often. That sort of communicates the idea that there is no refuge from a war. Even if you're not on the front lines, you're still on the front lines.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's beautifully, beautifully made by Xavier Beauvois, who is just a tremendous stylist and really just immerses you in the period and in the you just feel the farm, you feel the soil, you feel the work, the sweat, the linens on their clothing. It's just absolutely wonderfully realized. And I don't believe this was actually at Colcoa, and I'm very sad that it wasn't. But if it was, I missed it. Nonetheless, The Guardians, a wonderful Blu-ray from Music Box. And then this one was at Colcoa. This is from Kino Lorber. Custody by Xavier Legrand. And hey, look at that. That's 2 Xaviers, both of them in a row. That doesn't happen very often. And this is a first-time filmmaker, Xavier Legrand. Custody is... basically, this is like, let's see. It starts off like Kramer versus Kramer, and it ends like The Shining. That's the only way I can tell. I can describe this movie. This couple's getting a divorce. Film opens with a divorce settlement, and clearly the boy and his mom are terrified of Dad, but Dad is so sweet. He's so loving. I just want to be with my son. And that's when you're like, you're going to be out of your mind in about 85 minutes. And of course, he's sweet for most of the film, and then it's madness at the end. But there's so much tension in this film. It is just so tense right until it releases at the end. I'm not telling you anything that you're not going to figure out rather easily, but it's quite an exercise in direction, and it's really rock solid filmmaking, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This includes an interview with Xavier Legrand and a making of documentary, and as well as his Academy Award nominated short film. So that's also a first rate release.
The complete first season of Charmed. This is interesting in that the new version of Charmed just premiered last week. The television series about three witches, sisters, who have to.
I'm fed up with witches because Suspiria's in
theaters
yes,
right now. I heard you guys talking about that on the radio today.
Done.
Was that thing? The original Charmed, believe it or not, 1998. With Alyssa Milano and blah 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 and all those. And I got to tell you, I watched this series way back in 1998. Holly Marie Combs and all. Like I watched this series back then. It was on for 10 years.
Yeah,
and it was
that's
a lot
amazing.
Of fun.
10 years.
10 years. They don't do that anymore.
I know.
It goes back to that thing we talked about at the top of the show. Dude, I watched Charmed in 1998. Me and a bunch of 12-year-old girls. And it was a fun show that I rather enjoyed. It might have been like one of the early shows. There was about this whole sort of woman's empowerment thing. The thing that I liked about Charmed is that the witches aren't bad. The witches are good. So there was no hating on witches in this show. Anyway, this is the complete first season, restored in brilliant high definition, first time on Blu-ray. I wish that there was more on here, maybe some, I don't know, feature conversation or something like that, but there's not. But if you like this series, give it a look.
The Durrells in Corfu continues with a third season. This is a masterpiece series, a British series that continues to just enthrall people here. I'm much more a Downton Abbey person myself, but it's they're on vacation in Greece and they're having a great old time, and then there's a little soapy stuff that goes on. It's not as earth-shattering or as compelling as a lot of other stuff on Masterpiece, but that Greek backdrop is just so beautiful, and it's in its third season for a good reason. You get favorite locations here among the special features, and my goodness, they are wonderful, wonderful locations. So the Durrells in Corfu in its third season on DVD.
And we have the complete fourth season of Poldark. This was always a fun series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a good show.
Slightly historical in some ways. Dashing.
The Revolutionary War shenanigans and
all of that's sort of playing out in this fourth season. All the political stuff that's going on in the background, which I found most interesting about the show. Other than that, there's a lot of romance and people Jane Austen-esque sort of sweeping off the feet and that kind of stuff. Includes a lot of behind the scenes bonus video stuff, which is kind of interesting too if you're into the show. The complete fourth season.
And we're going to wrap out with some classic movies. We got a trio from the Warner Archive collection, which, by the way, now you have no streaming access to these Warner Archive films, so you got to get them on manufacture on demand. Looker was one of those Michael Crichton efforts that when he was still a filmmaker before he decided I'm just going to write novels and make more money when someone else makes my novels into movies, which is eventually what happened. But Looker is actually kind of, along with Coma and the Andromeda Strain and all the rest of those things that he was doing at the time, is not bad actually. It's kind of timely, to be honest. It ties in with a lot of things that are going on now in the digital era. The issues of celebrity and voyeurism, and anyway, Looker is it's cooler now than I think it even was at the time. So well worth checking that out again. Albert Finney and James Coburn. We've got Queen of Outer Space with Zsa Zsa Gabor, which is just an absolute camp classic. There's no reason to actually divulge the plot here. Look, it's a straight up wacky alien, low-budget exploitation film from the era, written by Charles Beaumont, who wrote all that Corman-y stuff and did a great job. Ben Hecht had a hand in this as well, and it's the only reason you're seeing this is because Zsa Zsa Gabor plays an alien queen. There's no other reason. There's no other reason to watch this. And then Bad Ronald, which is a movie I'd completely forgotten about, which is kind of in the wake of Psycho. This is sort of a 70s era I don't know, expanded spin-offs of the psycho phenomenon a little bit. You know, you had a lot of serial killers roaming around there, post-Psycho and post-Manson. And you know, everybody was kind of had this image in their heads of what a creepy crazy looked like, and then of course you had Scorpio in Dirty Harry, and so this fits in with that whole moment, and it's a pretty chilling movie, and it still has a lot of power to shock. So you might want to give a look at Bad Ronald, which is also from the Warner Archive collection.
From the Band brothers, Charles and Albert, Prehysteria. I remember this movie about 1992, 1993. Right around the time the original Jurassic Park, this and everything. What did the bands do? The bands would look out and they'd see what's going on out there in the zeitgeist for movies, and then they would make a much less good movie featuring the same sort of dynamic. In this particular one, dinosaurs were happening. So what do? They find a little family. They find a kid. They give the kid some eggs. The eggs hatch and has some dinosaurs. There you go. You got yourself a movie. It's kind of fun. Austin O'Brien, who would the very same year be in The Last Action Hero, that this movie came out, which is a much, much bigger movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger, F. Murray, everybody's in the movie. Big flop, big flop. Ironically, this movie was a bigger hit than The Last Action Hero. That's funny. That's funny to me. That's crazy. It kills me. Kind of neat. Lots of stuff in terms of special features on here. You got to, if you're into Charlie and Albert Band, you'll have some fun with these goofy movies. Can't go wrong. Kind of take you back to the whole VHS era back then, which does also the collector's edition. Nicolas Cage and Deborah Foreman. I was so nuts about Deborah Foreman, Valley Girl. For the first time on Blu-ray, apparently. Yeah. From Shout Select.
Yeah.
So, what's up with that? Seriously, first time on Blu-ray?
I know.
Right? This is Nick Cage back when he was still fantastic. This movie kind of holds up, I mean, all that sort of Valley Girl speak, everything. It's very funny. Nick Cage, when he was brooding and young and still had his own hair, and before he started going bananas. And you talked about him in a movie about 2 or 3 weeks ago with Bill Duke, and he just goes off the kind of off the res a little bit here too, if you think about it.
He is.
That's the shades of that in this movie. This is just packed full of all kinds of special features. If you like these sort of 80s collector's edition movies, you'll enjoy Valley Girl.
Yeah. And then I think the last two we've got this week, a couple from the Arrow lines, one from Arrow Video proper, the other from Arrow Academy. The Arrow Academy, they should both be Arrow Academy, frankly, but the first one is Distant Voices Still Lives from Terrence Davies. This won the Critics' Prize at the 1988 Cannes Film Festival, and very deservedly so. Terrence Davies, he was like James Ivory, except much more internal and introspective. Terrence Davies made this about his own childhood and family, his working-class family upbringing during the 40s and 50s in Liverpool, and it's just poetry. It's pure poetry. It's just so visual and elegiac. What's that word? That word.
You're close enough.
Yeah, thank you. It's absolutely wonderful, and it has only increased its reputation over time. Tons of extras here, including a commentary by Davies that is just so beautiful and insightful. And stuff with the art director, and some BFI archives things from 1939, 41, and 42 that sort of show you how realistic the film is, how it absolutely is exactly what it represents. And then the other one from Arrow, you got to get this. I'm sorry, this Criterion. How did you let this slip away? Arrow, kudos to you for not letting it slip away. 12 freaking monkeys. Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys out in a Blu-ray that is to die for, loaded with extras, including the Hamster Factor, the feature-length making-of documentary by Keith Fulton and Louis Pepe, who would go on to do Lost in La Mancha, which is even better. But look, 12 Monkeys, brilliant, one of the great Terry Gilliam films of all time. Brad Pitt, Bruce Willis, based on La Jetée, that's right. And here's the thing. The Hamster Factor is practically as good as the movie. Yeah. And I remember you're the one who told me to see The Hamster Factor because you said, you got to watch The Hamster Factor because Chuck Roven, the producer, saves that film from Terry Gilliam twice. Yeah. And you told me that. You said, just wait, you'll see where.
Yeah. Really, it's very, very important. It shows what producers do.
And it is true. It is, and I wasn't going to watch it originally, and this was years ago. You said, no, watch it. You got to watch it. I'm like, it's a making of, you got to watch it. I was like, okay. And sure enough, there are a couple of moments there where Chuck Roven just kind of taps Terry on the shoulder and says, No.
No. You know, Quentin Tarantino has needed someone to do that for him for
Yeah.
10 years now.
Yep, very true.
Yeah.
So with that, we are done this week, and we will be back next week, and we'll have plenty of I think next week may even be our holiday show. I have to, we're doing this a number of weeks out, so stay tuned. Big holiday show coming up. If not next week, then the week after.